I sat across from my husband's parents in their formal living room, the kind with furniture too expensive to actually use, and watched my mother-in-law slide a document across the coffee table toward me. The paper made a soft whisking sound against the polished wood, and I remember thinking how such a quiet gesture could carry so much violence. "It's just a formality," she said, her voice carrying that practiced sweetness she used when she wanted something. "Michael is your husband. What's yours should naturally be his. This just makes it official." The document was a quitclaim deed. I knew because I'd seen dozens of them in my work as a paralegal. This one would transfer my grandmother's house, the house she'd left specifically to me, the house that sat on prime waterfront property in Seattle worth over $2 million, directly into Michael's name, not our joint names. His name, solely and completely. My father-in-law cleared his throat, the sound deliberate and authoritative. "We've consulted with our attorney. This is the cleanest way to handle the inheritance. Protects the family assets. You understand." I looked at the document, then at Michael sitting beside his father. My husband of 3 years wouldn't meet my eyes. He studied his hands like they contained answers to questions he didn't want to ask. "Michael?" I said quietly. "Did you know about this?" He shifted in his seat. "Mom and Dad just want to make sure everything's organized properly, for tax purposes." "Tax purposes," I repeated. The words felt hollow in my mouth. For those of you listening to this, I wonder where you are right now. Maybe you're washing dishes or driving to work or folding laundry while the world outside your window moves forward without pause. When this happened to me, I was sitting in a room that smelled like furniture polish and old money, feeling the foundation of my marriage crack beneath me. I'd love to know where you're hearing this story. Somehow it helps to imagine you out there, understanding what I'm about to tell you. My grandmother had died 4 months earlier. Sophia Chen had been 91 years old, sharp as ever, and she'd left me everything. Not because she didn't love my parents or my brother, but because she'd watched me care for her during her final 2 years. She'd watched me drive to her house every evening after work, make her dinner, help her with physical therapy exercises, read to her when her eyes got too tired for books. "You're the one who shows up," she'd told me once, her weathered hand gripping mine. "Not because you have to, because you want to. That matters, Maya. That always matters." The house had been in our family for 40 years. My grandfather had bought it when Seattle's waterfront was still rough and industrial, before tech money transformed the city. Now it sat in the middle of one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the Pacific Northwest, surrounded by modern glass towers and renovated historic buildings. I hadn't planned to keep it. The property taxes alone were crushing. But my grandmother had made me promise to live there for at least a year before making any decisions. "Give yourself time," she'd said. "Don't let anyone rush you into selling something you might regret losing." Michael and I had been living in a small apartment in Capitol Hill, paying $2,400 a month for 800 square feet. When I inherited the house, we'd discussed moving into it. He'd seemed excited, talking about hosting dinner parties, having space for an office, maybe starting a family. But his parents had other ideas. "The property taxes are substantial," and my mother-in-law continued, as if I hadn't been the one paying them for the past 4 months. "Michael's salary can handle that. Your income as a paralegal." She trailed off delicately, but the implication hung in the air. "Your income isn't sufficient. You need us. You need Michael." I looked at the document again. Standard quitclaim language, but missing the usual reciprocal agreements. No mention of joint tenancy, no survivorship rights, just a clean transfer from Maya Chen to Michael Patterson. As if my grandmother had left the house to him, not me. "I need to think about this," I said. My father-in-law's expression hardened. "What's there to think about? You're married. What's yours is his. That's how marriage works." "Then why doesn't the document put us both on the deed?" I asked. The silence that followed told me everything. My mother-in-law recovered first. "We're thinking about your future, Maya. If something happened to you, God forbid, the house would go through probate, tied up in legal complications. This way Michael inherits automatically. It protects you both. And if something happened to Michael?" I asked quietly. "Michael is young and healthy. Nothing's going to happen to him. Then why does he need sole ownership? My father-in-law stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. You're being paranoid and ungrateful. We're trying to help you manage a complex financial situation, and you're acting like we're trying to steal from you. I didn't say that. You implied it. He walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back like a disappointed headmaster. Michael deserves a wife who trusts him, who trusts his family. This attitude of yours is very concerning. Michael finally spoke. Maybe we should just table this for now. Give Maya some time to adjust to the idea. There's nothing to adjust to, his mother said sharply. This is basic estate planning. The fact that she's resisting suggests she doesn't view your marriage as permanent. The accusation landed like a slap. I looked at Michael, waiting for him to defend me, to tell his mother she was out of line. He said nothing. I picked up my purse. I'm going home. This is exactly what I'm talking about, my mother-in-law said, running away instead of having an adult conversation about your future. I walked to the door. Behind me I heard Michael say something, but the words were muffled by the blood rushing in my ears. I drove home, to the apartment, not the house, and sat in my car for 20 minutes, trying to process what had just happened. My phone buzzed. Michael, Mom says you overreacted. Can we talk about this rationally? I didn't respond. Instead, I called the one person I knew would give me straight advice. My best friend Lauren had been a family law attorney for 7 years. She'd seen every variation of marital manipulation and financial abuse. Tell me exactly what the document said, she instructed after I explained the situation. I described the quitclaim deed, the absence of joint tenancy language, the pressure tactics. Lauren was quiet for a long moment. Maya, do not sign that document. Do you hear me? Do not sign anything they give you. They made it sound so reasonable, like I was being paranoid for questioning it. That's called gaslighting, and it's textbook financial abuse. They want that house in Michael's name so you have no legal claim to it. If the marriage falls apart, you lose everything your grandmother left you. But we're married. Community property state. Wouldn't I still have some claim? Inherited property is separate property in Washington state. As long as it stays in your name, it's yours. The moment you transfer it to Michael, it becomes his separate property. If you divorce, you get nothing. Not half. Nothing. My stomach dropped. Michael wouldn't do that. Maybe not, but his parents sure would. And he's not standing up to them, is he? I thought about Michael sitting silently while his mother accused me of viewing our marriage as impermanent. About him asking me to be rational instead of recognizing how irrational his parents' demands were. What do I do? I asked. First, don't sign anything. Second, we need to talk about what this means for your marriage, because if Michael is going along with this, you have bigger problems than a house. I hung up and sat in the growing darkness of the apartment parking garage. Cars came and went around me, people returning home from work carrying groceries, living their normal lives. I felt like I was watching from behind glass, separated from that ordinary world by the realization that my husband might be willing to steal from me. Michael came home around 9. He looked tired, frustrated. Can we please talk about this? Your parents want me to sign over my inheritance. They want to help us manage it properly. That's different. How is asking me to put the house solely in your name helping us? How does that benefit me in any way? It benefits our marriage. It shows I trust you. You want me to prove I trust you by signing away the only significant asset I'll ever inherit? He rubbed his face. This is coming out wrong. Look, my parents are good with money. They've built significant wealth through smart planning. They're trying to share that expertise with us. Did they explain why it needs to be only your name on the deed? It's cleaner for tax purposes. That's not true, Michael. I looked it up. There's no tax advantage to having it in one spouse's name versus both. If anything, joint ownership is better for estate tax purposes. He looked caught, uncomfortable. Maybe I misunderstood what they said? Or maybe they lied to you. Maybe they're lying to both of us. They're my parents. Why would they lie? Because they want control of a $2 million property? Michael's expression hardened. You really think my parents are trying to steal from you? That's insulting. They've been nothing but generous to you since we got married. I thought about the generosity he referenced. The expensive dinners where his mother criticized my outfit or my career choices, the holiday gifts that came with strings attached, the constant suggestions about how I should dress, act, work, live, generosity that felt like a leash. "I'm not signing the quitclaim," I said. "Then we have a problem." The words hung between us, heavy and cold. "What kind of problem?" I asked quietly. "My parents are threatening to pull their financial support. They've been helping us with expenses, covering things when we run short. They're saying if you won't trust our judgment on this, they can't trust you with their money." "We don't run short, Michael. You run short because you spend beyond our means. I've been covering the rent by myself for 3 months because you keep forgetting to transfer your half. I've had unexpected expenses. You bought a $3,000 watch last month. That was a business necessity. You work in tech sales, not luxury retail. You don't need a Rolex to sell software." The argument spiraled from there, covering familiar territory. Michael's spending habits, his parents' influence, my controlling nature, his need for independence. We'd had versions of this fight a dozen times, but this one felt different. Sharper. More dangerous. Finally exhausted, I said, "I need to sleep. We'll talk tomorrow. We need to resolve this. We won't resolve anything tonight when we're both angry." I went to the bedroom and closed the door. Through the wall I could hear Michael on the phone, his voice too low to make out words, but the tone clear. He was calling his mother. The next morning I woke to find Michael already gone. A note on the kitchen counter. "Staying at my parents' for a few days. Needs space to think. We'll talk when you're ready to be reasonable." Ready to be reasonable. Translation: when I was ready to sign the document, I called in sick to work and drove to my grandmother's house. I hadn't been there since the funeral, couldn't bear to walk through rooms that no longer contained her presence. But now I needed to be there, to remember why she'd left it to me. The house sat on a small bluff overlooking Puget Sound. It was a craftsman style built in 1924, with original hardwood floors, a stone fireplace, and windows that framed the water like paintings. My grandmother had maintained it meticulously, hiring professionals for major repairs, but handling the small things herself. I remembered helping her paint the kitchen, the summer I was 15, both of us covered in pale yellow paint, laughing at how terrible we were at cutting straight lines. I walked through the rooms slowly. The furniture was still arranged the way she'd liked it. Her books still lined the shelves in the living room. The kitchen still smelled faintly of the jasmine tea she drank every morning. In her bedroom I found the letter she'd left for me with her will. I'd read it once after the funeral, too grief-stricken to fully absorb the words. Now I read it again, slowly. "My dearest Maya, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And you're probably overwhelmed. I'm sorry to add to that burden by leaving you this house. I know it will be complicated. I know others will have opinions about what you should do with it. But I'm giving it to you specifically because I trust you to honor what it means. This house isn't just property, it's history. It's the place where your grandfather and I built our life, where your mother grew up, where you spent countless afternoons as a child, reading in the window seat, helping me tend the garden. I'm not asking you to keep it forever if that's not what you want, but I am asking you to be thoughtful about what you do with it. Don't let anyone pressure you into decisions you're not ready for. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for protecting what I've given you. You have always been the one who shows up, the one who cares deeply and loves freely. Don't let anyone take advantage of that kindness. Your worth is not measured by what you give away. With all my love, Grandma Sophia." I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. She'd known. Somehow she'd known people would try to take this from me. Maybe not specifically Michael's parents, but someone. There was always someone who looked at inherited wealth and saw an opportunity. My phone rang. Michael's mother. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Maya, we need to talk about your behavior yesterday. You embarrassed Michael and showed tremendous disrespect to our family." "I didn't mean to be disrespectful." "Then you'll sign the quitclaim and apologize for causing this unnecessary drama." "Mrs. Patterson, I'm not comfortable signing over my inheritance." "Comfortable? Marriage isn't about being comfortable. It's about sacrifice and commitment, something you clearly don't understand." I understand commitment. I'm just not sure why commitment requires me to give up the only thing my grandmother left me. Because Michael is your husband, he should control the family assets. That's how successful marriages work. Or do you think you know better than people who've been married for 35 years? The conversation went in circles for 20 minutes. She alternated between sweet manipulation and outright hostility, trying different tactics to wear down my resistance. Finally, I ended the call using the excuse that I had another appointment. I sat in my grandmother's living room and thought about the past 3 years of marriage, about how Michael's parents had slowly inserted themselves into every aspect of our life, how they'd criticized my career, my family, my choices. How Michael had slowly started echoing their opinions, even when they contradicted things he'd believed when we first got married. I thought about the man I'd fallen in love with, the one who'd supported my decision to go to paralegal school while working full-time, who'd encouraged my close relationship with my grandmother, who'd said he admired my independence. That man had gradually disappeared, replaced by someone who needed his parents' terse approval more than he needed an equal partnership. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Mom says you were difficult on the phone. This is getting out of hand. Just sign the papers so we can move on." I stared at the message. Just sign the papers. As if my grandmother's house, my inheritance, my future security were all minor inconveniences standing in the way of family harmony. I called Lauren. "I think I need a lawyer," I said. "Not for advice, for representation." "You're sure?" "I'm sure." She was quiet for a moment. "Okay, then I need you to document everything, every conversation about the house, every pressure tactic, every demand. Dates, times, what was said. Can you do that?" "Yes." "Good. Don't tell Michael or his parents that you're doing this. Don't tip your hand, just gather information." "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking this might get ugly, and I want to be prepared." Over the next 2 weeks, I lived in a strange state of suspension. Michael stayed at his parents' house, coming by the apartment occasionally to pick up clothes or check the mail. We didn't talk about the house. We barely talked at all. His parents called constantly, alternating between threats and manipulation. His father suggested my refusal to sign proved I was planning to divorce Michael and wanted to keep the house as a nest egg for my exit strategy. His mother cried on the phone about how I was destroying their son's happiness. Michael sent texts that ranged from conciliatory to angry. Sometimes he said he understood my hesitation and we could work it out together. Other times he accused me of being selfish and paranoid. I documented everything. Meanwhile, I discovered things I'd been too trusting to notice before. Michael's business expenses had drained our joint checking account of over $15,000 in 6 months. The credit card I'd added him to as an authorized user had a balance of $8,000, all charges I didn't recognize. His student loans, which he'd said were almost paid off, actually had a balance of $47,000. I also found emails between Michael and his mother discussing the house. They'd been planning this for months, since before my grandmother died. His mother had researched the property value, consulted with their family attorney, developed a strategy for handling Maya's inheritance. One email from Michael's mother made my blood run cold. "Once the property is in your name, we can discuss options for maximizing its value. Maya's emotional attachment is understandable, but financially naive. She'll thank us later when she sees the returns." They were planning to sell it. Not eventually, but immediately. The entire appeal for me to sign over the house wasn't about family unity or tax planning. It was about getting control of the property so they could sell it and invest the proceeds according to their strategy. I showed everything to Lauren. "This is financial abuse," she said flatly. "And it's premeditated. They've been planning to take your inheritance since before you received it. What do I do? First, remove Michael from your authorized user account. Close the joint checking account and open a new one in only your name. Change your passwords for everything, bank accounts, email, utilities, everything. Then we need to talk about whether you want to stay in this marriage." "I don't know." "That's okay. You don't have to know right now. But you need to protect yourself financially while you figure it out." I spent the weekend executing Lauren's instructions. I opened a new checking account and transferred half the money from the joint account. I removed Michael as an authorized user on my credit card. I changed every password I could think of. On Monday, Michael showed up at the apartment during his lunch break. He looked terrible, exhausted, stressed. "We need to talk," he said. "Okay. My parents are really upset. This whole situation is affecting my relationship with them. I'm sorry about that. Are you? Because it seems like you're trying to drive a wedge between me and my family." "I'm not trying to drive a wedge. I'm trying to protect something my grandmother left me. By refusing to trust your husband. By refusing to give away the only significant asset I'll ever inherit to someone who's accumulated $8,000 in credit card debt on my account without telling me." He froze. "You went through my accounts?" "There are joint accounts. Accounts you've apparently been using to fund a lifestyle we can't afford." "I was going to tell you." "When? After you'd maxed out the card?" "You're changing the subject. This is about the house. This is about trust. You're asking me to trust you with a $2 million property when you can't be trusted with a credit card." His face reddened. "I make one mistake and suddenly I'm financially irresponsible?" "One mistake? Michael, you've spent $15,000 from our joint account in 6 months on things like expensive watches and dinners. You've hidden your student loan debt. You've let your parents plan how to sell my inheritance before I even decided what to do with it." "How did you?" He stopped, realizing he'd confirmed what I'd found. "I found the emails. The ones between you and your mother, discussing handling my inheritance and maximizing the property value. You were planning to sell the house the whole time." "That's not what—" "Look, my parents have experience with real estate investments. They were just offering suggestions. They were planning to take control of my grandmother's house and sell it for profit. And you were helping them. You're twisting everything." "Am I? Tell me honestly, Michael. If I had signed that quitclaim, what would have happened to the house?" He couldn't meet my eyes. "We would have made the best financial decision for our future, which was selling it. Real estate is a bad investment right now. Keeping a $2 million property when we could liquidate and invest the proceeds. It's not your property to liquidate, it's mine. My grandmother left it to me, not us. She had reasons for that." "Yeah, because you manipulated her when she was dying." The accusation shocked me into silence. Michael seemed to realize he'd crossed a line, but he couldn't take it back. "My mother said—" "Your mother wasn't there. She didn't see me helping my grandmother with physical therapy every day. She didn't see me reading to her when she couldn't hold books anymore. She didn't see me sitting beside her hospital bed for the last week of her life." "That doesn't mean you deserved the entire inheritance. My grandmother thought it did, and it was her house, her decision." "Well, maybe your grandmother was senile at the end. Maybe she wasn't thinking clearly." I felt something break inside me. Not loudly or dramatically, just a quiet snap, like a thread pulled too tight. "Get out," I said. "Maya, get out of this apartment. Take whatever you need, but get out. You're overreacting. Your mother was right about one thing. This marriage isn't going to last. Because I'm not staying married to someone who calls my grandmother senile to justify stealing my inheritance." Michael's expression shifted through several emotions: anger, shock, calculation. Finally, he grabbed his laptop and some clothes from the bedroom. At the door, he turned back. "You're making a huge mistake. My parents have already consulted with an attorney. If you insist on keeping that house separate, there will be legal consequences." "I have an attorney too. Tell your parents they can communicate with her from now on." I gave him Lauren's business card. He stared at it like I'd handed him a snake. "You actually hired a divorce lawyer?" "I hired a lawyer. What kind depends on what happens next." He left without another word. I sat in the quiet apartment and waited for regret or sadness to arrive. Instead, I felt a strange sense of clarity, like I'd been looking at my life through foggy glass, and someone had finally wiped it clean. The next morning, Lauren called. "Michael's parents' attorney just contacted me. They're threatening to sue for fraud, claiming you manipulated your grandmother into leaving you the house." "Can they do that?" "They can file. Whether they'd win is another question. Do you have any documentation of your relationship with your grandmother? Emails, text messages, anything showing she was of sound mind?" I have years of text messages. She was sharp until the very end. We texted almost every day. Good, start compiling those. Also any photos of you two together, especially ones that show you helping with her care. We need to paint a clear picture of your relationship. They're actually going to sue me? They're going to try. This is about intimidation, Maya. They want you scared enough to sign over the house just to make the legal threat go away. I'm not signing anything. I know. That's why we're going to prepare for the worst. The lawsuit was filed 2 weeks later. Michael's parents claimed I had exercised undue influence over my elderly grandmother, manipulating her into disinheriting my parents and brother in my favor. They sought to void the will and divide the estate equally among my grandmother's 3 grandchildren, me, my brother, and ironically, no one else, because my grandmother only had 2 grandchildren. The legal theory was creative but fundamentally flawed. My parents and brother would have had standing to contest the will. Michael's parents, who weren't related to my grandmother and had no claim to her estate, did not. Lauren filed a motion to dismiss, based on lack of standing. This shouldn't make it past the preliminary hearing, she said. They have no legal right to contest your grandmother's will. They're not heirs, not beneficiaries, not anything. The hearing was held on a Thursday morning in King County Superior Court. I dressed in the conservative navy suit I wore for important meetings at work. Lauren met me outside the courtroom, looking sharp and confident in her attorney armor. Michael's parents sat across the aisle with their lawyer, a man named Robert Chen, no relation, who'd apparently made a career of elder law cases. Michael sat between them, not looking at me. Judge Patricia Okafor reviewed the motion in silence, occasionally making notes. Finally, she looked up at Robert Chen. Counsel, help me understand your client's standing in this matter. They're not related to the decedent. They're not named in the will. What gives them the right to contest it? Robert Chen stood. Your Honor, my client's son is married to the beneficiary. They have a vested interest in the proper distribution of marital assets. This wasn't a marital asset. The property was inherited by Mrs. Patterson after her marriage. It's separate property under Washington law. We're arguing that the inheritance itself was obtained through fraud. That would give the actual heirs standing to contest the will. Your clients aren't heirs. I'm asking what gives them standing. Robert Chen tried several different arguments. Judge Okafor dismantled each one with surgical precision. Finally, she interrupted him. Counsel, I've reviewed the case law you cited. None of it supports your client's position. In fact, it explicitly states that non-family members lack standing to contest a will absent some other legal relationship to the decedent or the estate. Your Honor, we believe. I'm going to stop you there. Judge Okafor removed her glasses, a gesture I'd learned meant she was about to deliver a ruling that wouldn't go well for someone. This case is dismissed for lack of standing. Furthermore, I'm awarding attorney's fees to the defendant. This lawsuit was frivolous and appears designed to harass Mrs. Patterson into surrendering property she rightfully inherited. Robert Chen's face went pale. Your Honor, my clients acted in good faith. Your clients have no connection to the decedent and no claim to the estate. This lawsuit was baseless from the start. Any attorney with basic knowledge of probate law should have advised them of that before filing. The gavel came down. The entire proceeding had lasted less than 20 minutes. In the hallway afterward, Michael's parents tried to approach me. Lauren stepped between us. Any further contact should go through me, she said. That includes phone calls, emails, and showing up at my client's home or workplace. My mother-in-law's expression twisted with rage. You poisoned our son against us. You manipulated that poor old woman, and now you're stealing from our family. Your family has no claim to my client's inheritance. The judge made that very clear. We'll appeal. Then you'll lose again and owe more attorney's fees. I suggest you consult with your lawyer about the wisdom of that decision. Lauren guided me toward the elevator. Behind us, I could hear Michael's mother crying, his father's angry voice, Michael saying something too quiet to make out. In the parking garage, I finally let myself feel the weight of what had happened. My husband's parents had sued me, publicly claimed I'd manipulated my dying grandmother, tried to take the only thing of value I'd ever inherited, and Michael had let them. had sat beside them in court while they attempted to legally steal from me. "What happens now?" I asked Lauren. "Now you decide about your marriage. Because this doesn't get better, these people will never stop trying to control you." I drove to my grandmother's house and sat in her favorite chair, the worn recliner by the window that overlooked the sound. The afternoon light turned the water silver and gold. My phone buzzed. "Michael, can we please talk? Without lawyers? Just us?" I stared at the message for a long time before responding. "Your parents just sued me for my inheritance and lost. What's left to talk about?" I didn't know they were going to do that. They told me it was just a preliminary inquiry. "You sat in that courtroom while they claimed I manipulated my grandmother." "I know, it was wrong. I told them it was wrong, but they wouldn't listen. And you went along with it anyway." The three dots appeared and disappeared several times. Finally, I thought they knew what they were doing. "They're my parents. Your parents tried to steal from me, Michael. They planned it for months, and you helped them. I never wanted the house for myself. I just wanted us to make smart financial decisions. Transferring my inheritance solely into your name isn't a smart financial decision. It's theft with paperwork." No response came for several minutes. Then, "I think we need counseling." I laughed out loud in the empty house. Counseling. As if the problem was communication rather than the fact that my husband and his parents had spent months plotting to take my grandmother's house. I didn't respond. Instead, I texted my brother James, who I hadn't spoken to in weeks. He was backpacking through Europe, chasing some dream of finding himself before settling into corporate life. "Grandma's house is mine. Michael's parents tried to take it, got divorced instead." His response came an hour later. "Good. That guy was always an asshole. Proud of you for standing up to them." Over the next few weeks, I moved my essential belongings into my grandmother's house. The apartment lease was in both our names, but I stopped paying my half of the rent. Michael could figure it out or let it go into default. I didn't care anymore. I filed for divorce using Lauren as my attorney. Washington was a no-fault divorce state, with community property laws. But since we'd been married less than 4 years, and my inheritance was separate property, the proceedings were relatively straightforward. Michael contested the divorce initially, insisting we try counseling. I refused. His parents made one last attempt at manipulation, sending me a long email about how divorce would destroy Michael, how I was abandoning him in his time of need, how I was proving I'd never really loved him. I forwarded the email to Lauren, without responding. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Michael got to keep his student loan debt and credit card balances. I kept my inheritance and my sanity. At the final hearing, Michael tried to approach me one last time. "I'm sorry it ended this way. I did love you." "You loved the idea of what I could give you," I replied. "There's a difference." I signed the final papers and walked out of the courthouse into a bright Seattle afternoon. The sky was that perfect Pacific Northwest blue that only appears after weeks of rain. I felt lighter than I had in months. My phone rang. My mother, who'd been remarkably quiet through the entire ordeal. "Maya, I heard the divorce was finalized. How are you feeling?" "Honestly, relieved. Your father and I were worried you were making a mistake, but after what his parents did," she trailed off, "your grandmother would be proud of how you stood up for yourself." Tears stung my eyes. "You think so?" "I know so. She didn't leave you that house just because you took care of her. She left it because she knew you'd protect it. She knew you had the strength to stand against people who'd try to take it." After we hung up, I drove to the house, my house, and walked through rooms that no longer felt haunted by loss. I started planning renovations. The kitchen needed updating. The basement could be finished. The garden had been neglected and needed attention. I invited my brother to stay in one of the spare rooms when he returned from Europe. He'd been considering moving to Seattle anyway, and this would give us a chance to reconnect as adults. I adopted a dog from the shelter, a gentle golden retriever named Sunny, who loved the backyard and the water view. I planted vegetables in the garden my grandmother had maintained for decades. I hosted dinner parties for friends who'd supported me through the divorce. 6 months after the divorce was final, I was pruning roses in the front garden when a car pulled up. An expensive SUV. For a moment, my stomach clenched. thinking it might be Michael or his parents. Instead, a woman in her 60s stepped out. She had silver hair and kind eyes. "Are you Maya?" "Yes. I'm Patricia Hammond. I was a friend of your grandmother's. We served on the library board together. I remember her mentioning you. I heard you inherited the house. I'm so glad." Sophia was worried about what would happen to it. She glanced at the roses I'd been pruning. She would have loved seeing you care for her garden. We talked for a while about my grandmother, with sharing memories and stories. Before Patricia left, she said something that stayed with me. "Your grandmother told me once that she'd learned the hard way that not everyone who claims to love you has your best interests at heart. She said the greatest gift she could give you was the security to choose your own path. I think she'd be proud of the choices you've made." After Patricia drove away, I sat on the front porch with Sunny's head in my lap and looked at the house that had caused so much conflict. The house that had revealed my marriage for what it really was. The house that had forced me to choose between keeping peace and keeping my integrity. I thought about the woman I'd been a year ago. Eager to please. Quick to doubt my own instincts. Willing to sacrifice my needs to avoid conflict. That woman wouldn't have stood up to her in-laws. She would have signed the quitclaim and hoped for the best. She would have let guilt and pressure override her better judgment. I wasn't that woman anymore. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Hope you're happy in that house you stole. Karma's coming." I blocked the number without responding. Michael's mother's final attempt at intimidation. It didn't land the way she hoped. I'd learned that standing up for yourself looks like selfishness to people who benefited from you not having boundaries. I'd learned that family wasn't always about blood. Sometimes it was about who showed up, who supported you, who celebrated your success instead of trying to steal it. I'd learned that the right choice and the easy choice were rarely the same thing. A year after the divorce, I received an unexpected letter. It was from Michael, forwarded through Lauren's office. He was in therapy, working through his issues with his parents' control. He understood now how wrong they'd been, how wrong he'd been. He hoped I was doing well. He wanted me to know he was sorry. I read the letter once and filed it away. Maybe he was genuinely sorry. Maybe therapy had helped him see how his parents' influence had damaged his ability to be a true partner. Maybe he'd grown. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I was busy filling the house with new memories. My brother had moved in and was working at a tech startup downtown. We had Sunday dinners together, cooking in the kitchen I'd renovated. We argued about whose turn it was to walk Sunny and whether the Mariners would ever win the World Series. We were rebuilding the sibling relationship that had frayed during my marriage. I got promoted at work, finally moving from paralegal to legal assistant with a significant pay raise. The property taxes that had seemed so overwhelming when I first inherited the house were manageable now. I'd even started a small emergency fund. I dated casually, nothing serious. I'd learned I was happy on my own. A partner would have to add to that happiness, not complete it. There was a difference. On the anniversary of my grandmother's death, I scattered some of her ashes in the garden she'd loved. My parents and brother were there, a few of her old friends. We told stories and laughed and cried. We celebrated her life and her wisdom and the legacy she'd left behind. That evening, after everyone had left, I sat in her favorite chair and looked out at the sound. The sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. A ferry crossed the water, its lights reflecting on the waves. I thought about everything that had happened, the pressure tactics, the lawsuit, the divorce, the slow, painful process of untangling my life from someone who I'd thought was my partner but who'd actually seen me as an asset to be managed. I thought about the choice my grandmother had made in leaving me this house. How she'd seen something in me that I hadn't fully seen in myself yet. How she'd given me not just property, but a test. A challenge. Would I protect what I'd been given? Would I stand firm against people who tried to take it? Would I choose my own integrity over someone else's comfort? I'd passed that test, not perfectly, not without struggle, but I'd passed. The house settled around me with small creaking sounds, the way old houses do. I wasn't lonely, I was alone, which was different. I was alone and at peace and living in a home that was mine, legally, spiritually, completely mine. My phone buzzed one more time. James, movie tonight? I'll bring popcorn. Deal, I texted back. I stood and stretched, feeling sunny press against my legs. Outside, the last light faded from the sky. Inside, my house, my grandmother's house, our house, glowed with warm light. I'd learned a hard lesson about family, loyalty, and the difference between giving and being taken from. I'd learned that love without respect isn't really love at all. I'd learned that the people who truly care about you want you to protect yourself, not sacrifice yourself. Most importantly, I'd learned that some things are worth fighting for. Not because they're expensive or valuable, but because they represent something larger. Autonomy, self-respect, the right to make your own choices without being manipulated or controlled. My grandmother had given me more than a house. She'd given me the opportunity to discover my own strength, to learn that I could stand alone, to understand that protecting myself wasn't selfishness, it was survival, and I would protect what was mine, not out of greed or spite, but out of respect for the woman who'd believed in me enough to trust me with her legacy. If you're listening to this and wondering whether it's okay to stand up to family who try to take from you, let me tell you clearly, it's not just okay. It's necessary. The people who truly love you won't ask you to prove it by giving away pieces of yourself. They won't pressure you into choices that benefit them at your expense. They won't sue you for protecting what's rightfully yours. Tell me in the comments what you would have done in my situation. And where you're listening from today. Because sometimes the most important word you can learn is no. And sometimes protecting yourself means walking away from people you thought you'd spend your life with. The house still stands. So do I. And that's worth more than any apology Michael could ever offer.